Welcome, everyone, to Latter Daily Digest. We honor creators, and last month was John Dehlin's 55th birthday. We did a series of people sharing their impactful Mormon stories, either like the first time they saw an episode or something that really was meaningful to them. And I'm doing another series. I'm going to start it off with John Dehlin's very first podcast episode. It happened on September 6th. 2005, and I'm going to share a little bit with you in a little bit. But first, I'd like everyone to remember to like, subscribe, and share if you like these videos. And I want to invite anyone out there who wants to share their own Mormon Stories podcast. It'll be similar to this, where we'll start out by saying hi, and then we'll talk about the episode that's impactful to you. Hopefully, we can get people excited to share Mormon stories. You know, in a way, the older, the better. That'd be fun to see if 15 years ago or 12 years ago, somebody saw Mormon Stories and it was impactful to them and it changed the way, changed the trajectory of their life. So if that's something that you can share, comments in the description below. We'll have an email, contact information, and just to put Latter Daily Digest or Mormon Stories podcast or something in the subject line, and we'll get you on the calendar and we'll see what we can do about doing a show. So first of all, I'd like to present this little graphic. Mormon Stories podcast enters its 20th year. So also sometime this year, he's on like 1,930 episodes. Sometime this year or early next year, he'll have his 2,000th show will be aired. And that's pretty exciting. And to set the stage for his first show, he decided to tell a little bit of his Mormon story, and in a way, it's why he entered podcasting. This episode talks about how Mormon Stories aims to provide a platform for Mormons of all backgrounds to share their personal experiences. John grew up in Texas and served a mission in Guatemala, and he shares his story. He describes how some missionaries in Guatemala were baptizing large numbers of people, often using questionable methods. For example, they would play soccer with children and they would take them back to the chapel and baptize them, put them in white clothes and say, hey, get baptized, and get their names and submit those as baptism. This practice troubled John Dehlin, and then he raised his concerns with the mission president. However, instead of addressing the issue, the mission president reprimanded him and transferred him to a remote area. John's mission experience was challenging, especially due to his asthma, which would worsen in the unsanitary conditions of his new area. Eventually, he was sent home early, but later completed his mission in Arizona, where he had a more positive experience. Despite his efforts to report the unethical practices, the church leadership chose not to take significant action. This left John feeling disillusioned and questioning the integrity of the church. Years later, he learned that similar unethical practices occurred in other missions worldwide, leading to low activity rates among new members. And this realization further deepened his concerns about the church's focus on numerical success over genuine conversions. His podcast aims to shed light on these issues and provide a space for open and honest discussion about the experiences of Mormons. So I thought I would play a little bit of John's episode.
Podcasts out there. Listen to Catholic Mormon podcasts. I've listened to Latter-day Slant. Several other podcasts that have nothing to do with Mormon-related issues at all. And I felt called to begin a podcast about Mormon stories.
So it's interesting that he uses, terminology like being called, and he talks about how there were other podcasts in the arena. Most of these sprang up from blogs and web logs and then video logs.
Instead of dealing necessarily with, I've also spent significant time listening to the podcast from thechurchisnottrue.com. And I find all those podcasts fascinating and informative and interesting. I feel called to do something maybe a little bit different. I'm not so much going to be talking about current events or specific issues sort of in isolation. But instead, what I'm interested in doing is providing an open forum for all types of Mormons to tell their stories. They can be true believers. They can be Sunstone Mormons. They can be ex-Mormons or post-Mormons. It doesn't matter. I'm just interested in any type of Mormon having an open forum to be able to tell their story and to bring their stories together with people who are interested in listening. You can contact me at mormonstories@gmail.com. That's mormonstories@gmail.com. And if you're interested in telling your story, there's some new software out called Skype.
New software called Skype.
And Skype is cool because basically what it lets you do is through voice over IP on the internet. It'll allow you to talk to someone for free with pretty decent sound quality. And so
So that's like a snapshot into 20 years ago, well, 19 years ago. And it does seem like it was September 4th. I think I misspoke earlier. So anyhow, that's just an introduction to this new series. I remember first hearing this episode probably at the end of COVID summer when I was trying to learn more about John after I had binged a lot of Mormon stories. I wanted to see, what he had done early on. And it was, this event, going to his mission and having this series of unfortunate events, we'll say, causes missionaries to have a problem when they see that their missions are more like sales jobs than, like loving Christ's disciples, trying to spread the good word. And it seems more just about numbers, crunching those numbers, getting into the numbers, reporting the numbers. I know that I have some children that have gone on missions and they reported back to us that that does cause concern with missionaries. And from there, John, still stayed in the church, and he, ended up teaching, having various teaching callings at church and teaching seminary as his last sort of bastion. And that's where he started discovering he wanted to be a good seminary teacher. So he went deeper into history and saw things that he was never taught before. And at first he might have thought these must be anti-Mormon lies, but it turns out that there's so much that is just history. And while finding out, let's say, less savory events and the fact that, early Mormon leaders were, human, they made mistakes, at first was kind of encouraging to me when I found out some of the stuff like that. And it was just like, they're normal people. When the church had 1,000 members, it was just like maybe a stake that everybody, is in, right? With a few wards, few congregations, the leadership. So like the early apostles were just a little bit better than maybe, stake high counselors. And so thinking about that, and John would also, I remember him saying that he would hear of people leaving the church and then it would like destroy their families. Someone would find out about the history, one of the spouses in a marriage, and the other spouse would be advised to, initiate a divorce because that person could no longer take them to the celestial kingdom. And John sort of saw this carnage and he thought that he should, do more. So he thought he would, first of all, start the podcast and talk about how, Mormons are just regular people and here's different stories. And after that, he wanted to get his degree in psychology and try to help, counsel people. And he started a website where he would give information. I think it was called staymormon.com or something like that. When I was first finding out things, listening to Mormon stories actually helped me stay in the church and helped me continue to go in 2013 and 2014. And it was just too much for me once Kate Kelly got excommunicated, and then John Dehlin got excommunicated 6 months after that in early 2015, that it just became too much for me to attend church anymore. So anyway, that is, we're celebrating the 20th, we're entering the 20th year of Mormon Stories. I hope people can be inspired by this and, send us messages. Let us know if you want to do a show. It could be pretty easy. It's pretty casual. Talk about how the episode of Mormon Stories was impactful for you. And there's some samples that you can look in our channel and see, other people talking about Mormon stories that were impactful to them. And if you think you can do it, send us a note. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the summer, and like and subscribe and share. And let's see how we can get this information out to more people. All right. Bye-bye.